It's fun. That was fun. Hi everybody, my name is Jessica Holyfield. I'm a professional dancer, professional dance choreographer, and dance educator based out of the southeast of the United States. And we're taking a look at Kiss of Life's Shh dance practice. Now this won a mini marathon poll that I did on my Patreon. So typically I have a big marathon that I do of a group that's very established. I would say like ATs or 17. Or now very recently with Dreamcatcher. And what I've decided to do is, as I've been doing my Big Kahuna marathons, I wanted to slip in a Gen 5 or somebody that's really, really young as a group. So kind of the opposite. And kind of look through their discography, especially if they have more than 5. 5 or more is typically like a safe bet with the group. And Kiss of Life won the poll. So that's why we're taking a look here. For this, I have heard this song and I have seen the point choreography for it because it was on my algorithm before I even like really got into doing the reaction. So this is kind of cool to actually take a look at this in this way. And I think without further ado, let's go ahead and take a watch. Okay. They are throwing each other around in that. Do you see how much energy they do for that? That's so interesting. I think she also says the S word, right? It's fun. It's fun choreo. And I do know I think all of them are adults too, right? Maybe adults, but they're adults more so. Because that was something I think people were like, yay, for a group that doesn't have underage dancers or performers in it. I don't know. You can let me know if I'm even close. Fun. They do a good job maintaining performance. Oh man, we're never gonna escape this move progression in this generation. It just feels that way. The year 2023, diving into 24, that move is gonna just be the move that you see in a lot of overlap of a lot of choreo. I saw it a lot with Psychers. I remember that part was like a very iconic part for them. Da 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 da. Really gives a lot of problem. I got a problem. One less problem without you. It gives off that energy. It's an Ariana Grande kind of track. It's fun. That was fun. Like, definitely enjoyed that immensely, you know, and I do know we'll do like a mini little music video marathon too, of course. When we do the marathon, we gotta do the marathon, you know. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Initial thoughts. I mean, this isn't like a completely blind reaction. At least with the chorus choreo, I'm very familiar with it. I do like the fact that they coordinated with their shoes. Super fun. I feel that with the group of 4, they held it down very well. I'm assuming that whenever they do perform live, that's something that may stick out with them, is their ability to be able to promote physically around the type of fullness that they exuded here. I will say though, some of the fullness they gave here did feel a little bit not maybe unrefined, but it's different than, you know, most people operate with they're very stiff, but here it feels like they're over exuding energy in the wrong places, I think is what this comes across more so as. And I'm not talking about all of them, I'm saying just like one person in one part, but then when you distribute it amongst 4 people, that's 4 people, each one gets their own little part where they kind of over exude, and then it turns throughout the entire routine. So that's just like a little thing. Bring it in, dipping it down. Really nice choice of having them using their hips to dip it down. Bringing it through each other, diving it through. Nice little action in the center. Down in, little heart. I'm assuming they made a little heart, and then they had somebody in the center kind of help match that. That part right there, you could tell that she grabbed her freaking arm in this little moment right there. Let's go ahead and watch that. I think it happens a couple times in this. If you notice, she's gonna grab her arm and stop, like boom, like you can see that it's locked up now, or it stopped her from moving forward. Taking through, I like the accent of the head. That's nice, great stability. Throwing it down, great on the hips, bringing it over through. Really great job using your energy here. Yep. Ta-da! And I like how she dipped through that transition. That was a really cool choice. Running it through. Now, spacing was just a little bit off here. I think she overshot her position. When you have a group of 4, it's way easier to tell if spacing is off, because you only have so many places where you can have spacing off. So that's how you can tell, is that it's a little bit smaller in gap here in comparison to right here between their bodies. So that would be my general note. Ping it through. A little boom boom. Nice that they chose to hit it in versus out, that doom doom, because it feels like a more internal bass. It really helps in that regard. She has this moment dropping it down. Now it did feel like she, what was this? So she had to use her back foot to help make sure she didn't fall over. So if you think about it, she had to take that back foot. I think the goal would be for her to be able to stay in her spot and just kind of have that moment, but she had to step that foot where it needed to go in order to ensure that she wasn't going to be falling over in any particular way. Also note that everybody's kind of doing their own thing with their hands. Some of them are kind of really hovering and focusing with the face projecting forward. Others are kind of thin corner. I really like the personality they're giving. I like the full energy they're giving. It does give rookie energy, but like in the fullness and the power and the drive of like, yes, we want to make it. It gives off that energy, which I do like. And with girl groups, a lot of times you see them have a more like stoic approach in the choreo, which is fine and great. But this has a lot of like spunky energy in it that helps carry the type of tone they want to have as a group. And whenever you operate the group of 4, a lot of people are going to compare you to 2NE1, Blackpink, any group that has operated with 4 people, you know. So like those 2 I can note at the top of my head because 2NE1 were my girls back in the day, you know, and Blackpink, they were like the Hubeis of 2NE1. And then when you have like a group of 4 here, it's just, I know there's another group that operates with 4. Their name escapes me. I'm so sorry. If I have actually analyzed them before and their name, I am so sorry. But Kiss of Life also is a group of 4. So there's going to be like this natural like comparison of they have to make sure that they showcase themselves in a different avenue than what has been displayed with a group of 4 before, I think is my note. Is it? It's not aespa. aespa's 5. And so does Red Velvet. They have 5. 4 Minute had 5 people. FX had 5 people. Yeah, it's like most groups operate with 5. And so when you have 4, it's just different. It's just a little different. It's a little different, you know? But it's nice. Having it through, I like how she's taking her hand and then everybody was responding with their bodies to what her hand was doing, which was cool. That part was fun. Notice with my dancer, or my performer who was kind of singing in that moment, she didn't quite use her head as much as everybody else. Makes sense because she's the one singing there. That's totally fine. Driving it down. Really like that little nay-nay moment. That was cute. Switching in the lines. Now notice we have more like this reverse checkmark kind of formation. I like it, but you know, this is a formation you normally have when you have 5 people because you would have somebody that would feature it out and it'd be symmetrical on both sides. So they have to be pretty creative. When you operate with even numbers, you just have to be more creative creative in how you choose to showcase symmetry when needed, or you have to make it very, you have to progress it to where you don't make people think about, oh, this feels off balance. Because not only do you want it to not be off balance vocally, you don't want it to be off balance in music production, you do not want it to be off balance in your movement either. So I feel that they did a pretty good job of that. There wasn't really any indicator whenever I was watching it originally where I was like, ooh, this feels super off. But that's teach your own. I like that energy there, pushing it through, really that get up, back it up, back it up. You can tell she's a little bit too far forward. You can tell because this is where she's supposed to be, that she's scooted up just a smidge. So it's not, honestly less than a foot. And she would need to scoot over just a smidge as well to get that spacing in check. I like that boom, boom, boom. Notice that da-da-da. Like they have a lot of this extroverted energy that they're choosing to place in the hips there, which works if everybody hits it the same way. Now this part, I don't know if they were able to do this version live, because of the type of broadcast, but I do know in the music video, and then some people, whenever they do the trend, they use either version. So I think it's spunky because of the rebelliousness of a debut track this is, if that makes sense, which is kind of cool. I like it. Yep, on lips. Yeah, so sweet. I think like some of the energy of their range of how they're lifting the leg. Look, there's the most replayed. Makes sense. When they're here. Yeah, that's so sweet. It's just little baby range modifications. Notice hers was a little bit slower than everybody else's. Yes, she's singing, but if you're going to do the same choreography, you have to make sure that you start and finish at the same time. It's little things. That right there, that's an example of yeah, D, switch, da-da-da. You have to make sure everybody shows the same amount of energy when you're going to syncopate it like that, because if one person's really showing out, it's going to make everybody else look like they're muted. And then if everyone's going full out except for one person, then they're going to stick out in a bad way. So right there, it didn't feel like everybody was kind of on the same page of how, like the syncopation, yes, but the fullness of the syncopation was a little off. So that would be my note there. That part was better with diving into the hips. That part was much cleaner, which I do appreciate. And that part, ding, ding, whoa, nice little reverb of the head. Great moment there. And I like the personality. Did get a little cute, spunky, try me, like, what is it? Like a cute little bunny rabbit with a knife. It kind of gives off that energy. Hitting it through. That part was a little bit better in terms of, yes, syncopation was great both times, but how did it hit? Yeah, da-da-da-da-da-da, baby. Yeah, they did pretty good for that. Now, with the arms for that part, it did feel... Let me look at it again. Well, the last two really locked in pretty well. Notice my outside ladies, they dropped their arms. It's just a range thing. And that's honestly the hardest thing for groups in general, to get groups. No, I'm not talking about K-pop groups. Groups. Dance groups in general, that's the hardest thing to get in check, is range of timing, not just the timing. And if you don't know what that is, if this is your first time seeing one of my videos, its range has to deal with getting from point A to point B, not just A and not just B of a point of a move. Like how you get there, that is what makes it that crispy clean timing, but they're doing a fantastic job of matching energy facially. And that's something that a lot of times, a lot of groups don't do. So for them to already have that in lockdown is great. And notice, I would say she's the one, I think, is the one that's giving 150% in all of it, and then others are kind of refining it. Now, what I'm really curious about is how her movement adjusts whenever they do this live. Because for me, this feels like she's really focusing on the dancing, which I appreciate. It's dance practice, and we're focusing on the dancing here. But what does it look like with all of them when they perform live? Does she become more chill or subtle in her movement, and will that affect the overall aesthetic of the choreography as a whole? Because that's what makes this choreography stand out, is how they're choosing to syncopate the hips and the fullness of that. So that's definitely going to be something that I may have to check out a live version of this just to see. We will see. But yeah, that part looks fine. Definitely it's cool that we're writing it in a slightly different way. Normally you hear that da 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 da. They're not kind of doing that ping pong effect on that. They're syncopating it, and they're switching the timing of the hip switches, which is cool. I like it. It's a little brain tease. Now, that's an example of, notice half of them kind of had it closer to their body and half have it extended out. I don't know if they were all supposed to be individual in choice, but that would just be my note. If you're really supposed to point out at each other, just be mindful of making it like a true individual choice and not where everyone's close to where it looks like, oh, we're not all doing the same type of extension of the point. So that was nice where they all kind of stepped through. Notice some of them have more flexibility of their, I think it's their Achilles, is that back tendon right by the heel. Some of them have that flexibility, and some of them it appears that they don't, or they're not using it as much. So that will change how the walks come across. So that's why it's important, even if you have the flexibility for it, knowing how to get everybody on the same page and how they choose to walk, because watch, what's going to happen is the bounces are going to be a little off for this. Yep, and that's why they're off. If you notice, hers felt a little slower, which is interesting. I was actually expecting hers to be slower, but it's because their rate, their actual, like, where they're placing their weight and how flexible they are in their legs is factoring into the bounces themselves, because they're not thinking about it, because why would you? You know, it's normally not something you would think about. They're pointing through, really great feature from her. And then now we're going into a nice, making it more of a 360 type of effect, which I really like. I think it's cool. Diving it through. Also there, she's taking a more reserved approach. She's going very full. You want people to stand out when it's appropriate to stand out. And I think that's a note that I made with Psychers, with one of their dancers for a very similar reason. If your main role, like, she gives off main dancer energy, don't know if she is. I don't know if they have those types of titles anymore. But my point still remains of, when you have someone and their proficiency is within performing and dancing, there is a time and place where that is appropriate to be featured. But if you're operating as a group, you don't want them to stick out, whether it's them killing it or not, whenever it's not their time to be featured. I say this in the studio world a lot too. If you have a dancer, you have a couple dancers that are killing it and they're taking ownership of the routine, but not everybody is, that can kind of work against your group, because you're asking for more critiques about the performance quality not being where it needs to be, because only a couple people are sticking out and not the whole group is sticking out in energy. Does that kind of make sense? So whenever you're operating the group of 4, it's way easier to see. Or actually, no, it's actually a little bit harder to see that when you have a group of 4 compared to like a really large group where you have a lot of people, but you have somebody that's like really, really going for it. It is easier to kind of pick out when your eye is naturally drawn to them in a big group. Does that kind of make sense? And that's not coming from like a bias or you standing a group or not. That's just say that's where your eye naturally wants to go. When you see somebody really popping off on a track and they match the track the way you want them to, and everybody else isn't, why would you look at them? Does that make sense? So I think that would be something that needs to be clarified of, where's the energy on this and how is this energy going to change whenever she is performing live. So looking through, little smeeze. Now, some of them didn't really smeeze at all. I would say my dancer who was singing, she didn't smeeze, but I think everybody else did. But the upper body was so individualized, but it didn't feel like... And it's syncopated. Boom, dun, 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 dun. It felt like an in-between. Like they weren't smeezing, but they weren't transitioning like a normal choice. Yeah, I think it's because they didn't use any of the groove that is associated with the smeeze. They didn't really do. They just did the foot placement. Hence why it felt a little bit off with everybody, including our feature for that part. Sliding in, that's nice, but notice there's a chance that she overshot her distance. So now look, the spacing is super off here. Like you have some people really close together, some really far apart. So that would be my note there, to make sure if you're going into a diagonal type of formation and then you're trying to neutralize it, you have to compensate for when people overshoot, or if that diagonal causes somebody to be further away than other people, you have to figure out a troubleshooting transition and make sure the spacing is accounted for. So that's my general note for that. Yeah, even right here, the spacing is still pretty off on this side, but it's nice for her to have her moment. I like the stillness that they have. Oh, nice little moment, a little high five. I love the interaction. Now we have, it's the reverse from what we had the first time. First time, this empty space was over here, and now it's over here. So I do like the fact that they are being symmetrical which is why it didn't bother me. They're being symmetrical in the sense of how the formation is being replicated in similar parts of the track. So they're not just doing the same exact formation and causing more and more imbalance on a particular side throughout the whole track. They're actually trying to counteract that whenever they're doing a similar formation, but they mirror it. So it feels like there's a true mirror on whenever you hear part of the music. One time they're on one side, one time they're on the other side. So it actually balances it out pretty well, which is very impressive on the choreographer front. I like they throw it down, nice little movement picking it up. Now notice some of them really picked up their feet. She really picked up her feet, and I feel like that's kind of what the groove calls for. Here she didn't really pick them up, she kind of stepped her feet, so if we look back you'll notice that. It was the second foot she didn't pick up as much. So you want to have equal range with both of the feet. Yeah, so it's just that second one, and the reason why you would catch that, and it's subtle, but it still matters, is that when you have your feature not picking up her feet nearly as much, you want that first foot and that second foot to have the exact same range, because we're already struggling on that throughout the piece. It's not big, but it's just enough. It's stacking. And you're just able to tell, something's off with the picking up of the foot here in this motion. That would just be a little note to kind of keep in mind for that. Diving it in through. I like the peel through. Notice that half of them looked and half didn't, I don't think. Yeah, so one of them's looking. Maybe that's her feature. I think that's what happened, so never mind. So that was fine. Driving it down, notice that half of them didn't bring their arms all the way back up. Their arms are up here, which is nice. Ding, 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 ding. Individual pose. And then half of them only had it half had them all the way up. That would have been something based on your pose. I understand why they may have set it up that way. They need to have the arms up to match everyone if you're going to drop down into a unison spot. Switching it through, that part's fine. Back it up. Yep, da-da-da-da. So I think my general note for this is the choreography looks great on them. I think they have the power to do the choreography, but the power is not distributed the same way with everybody. And that's why it's so subtle that it feels like this isn't like that crispy clean, and you can have powerful choreo be crispy clean. It's possible. Watch D-League. It's a great freaking example of that. But my end thing is still the same of like, not everybody is putting the same amount of energy in these micro parts of the move, and that's why it feels like it's not 100% as clean, but it is clean. You know, it's passable on the clean least scale for sure. It really is. For the type of power it is, it's very impressive. The head rotation is nice. That part's nice, but notice too, it goes back here. It's whenever you have these two next to each other. She has a huge amount of fullness and usage of the back, of her back and her hips. For here, she takes a more like, not conservative approach, but it does feel more muted in comparison. But when you look at how she does it, it is the choreography, but she doesn't use this rotation and push that back in an arch nearly as much as the dancer next to her does. Does that kind of make sense? And it's not all the moves. It's just one or two moves that you see this in. And then right there to the reverb with the head. Really nice choice. Now here's this move. I saw that in Psychers as well. Notice the range was just a little bit different because half of them have it really pulled up and half have it about like at that 90. So that would be something to clarify if you're going to do unison for this. Yes, it works. It's just, that's a prime example of exactly what I was talking about. That it's just the buildup of energy is slightly different, and it's just different enough that it doesn't feel crispy clean. Scooting it through, same right there. Not everybody was scuffing through at the same time, causing that extra chug to happen. The chugs were happening around the same time, but not the energy that is needed to hit the chug the exact same way. Everybody branching away, twinging through. Now we notice that about half of them looked. I did feel like we were looking more to the diagonal. She was looking down, but then you had two look front. So I don't know if everybody was supposed to look front there. Not sure. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this too, because I noticed it with Dreamcatcher. When in dance practices, It is something that I talk about with my own students whenever they start doing it in the rehearsal space to try to avoid doing it. It's fixing your outfit and fixing your hair when you're supposed to be still. The reason why is that you're building an implicit habit to fix things without realizing that's what you're doing. If you're doing it here in the practice space, when you're on stage, not thinking about that, what are you have a higher risk of doing on stage? That exact thing. Now, they're performers, and people, whenever they do perform live, they're not going to care so much about those little details nearly as much as their singing capacity live. I get that. But it's still a really nice habit to go ahead and get in the habit of, is to try not to touch your hair or your outfit while you're performing, unless you're very strategic in how you choose to do it. If you're a feature and you can make it a moment, that works. Or in a transition, you can secretly do it too. I would say 17 has showcased a couple of those little instances in their dance practices. I don't remember one at the top of my head. It's during the era, I will say it's during the era of like Snapshoot, and I think it was like My, I think like that little era. And I remember it was The8 specifically did it, I think, where he dropped his hat and he needed to pick it up. I could be wrong on who it was, but it did happen and I did talk about it. So, but going here, that's an example. She's having her feature moment and then she's making it a thing because she's featured, and it's fine for her to move because she's the only one that's supposed to be moving. Do you know what I mean? She pulls it in. I love that moment. That was cool. Switching it through. Really nice. They move through. Here we go. Getting ready to pop off. Final chorus. Yep. Now here, notice that some have half their face entirely covered. Some have it like, let's look. These effects, I cannot get rid of them. But like they're here and they're like, let's shout it. For me, I think this was more of an individualized choice, which doesn't really bother me as much because everybody's elbows are out, and I think that's the bigger victory with this. Yep, everybody pops off. Everybody takes their hands. They shoot them up. That was really, really great choice, or showcasing the power of the cleanliness that they have. And their feature was the only one who didn't pop her hands up. She popped them up after. That's a great example of what I was talking about. Everybody put the energy in the right place. Ready? Right here. They threw it. Yep, I would say one of them is just slightly off, but not. I mean, the power was still there. Yeah. Oh. Yep, digging through. Down, down, na, 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 na. That part wasn't quite as clean on the syncopation of the hips for that section. It kind of felt like we were just hoping for the best on the timing for that, and spacing is still a little bit off. And this is another example. Do you see how far back she's going to showcase this motion, but then everybody else is not? That's the example that I'm talking about. When you have enough of these types of discrepancies, it's so minimal, but you can see it when paused. That affects the overall cleanliness of the power you're exuding as a group. Now, is that what they want to be known as a super clean group? I don't think so. I mean, when you really think about it, when you think about your discography and you think about the type of people that you have, the type of roles that you have, and what you want to get out as a group, some groups prefer to be known as singers over dancers. Other groups want to be known as more dancers than singers. And other groups want to be well-rounded in all of it. And truly be well-rounded in all of it. You know? And then for some of them, when you really think about it, some of them may have to make a choice depending on who all's in your group, the amount of training and the amount of effort and hustle and grind that you put in. And what kind of team you have that you're working with. Because some groups that are set up very well from the beginning are groups that have had an established team that they keep for the majority of their career. You know, 17, a great example of this. So I would say for them, my hope is as they continue to work with whoever they work with, I hope they don't have too many choreographic, like the turnover on the choreographic side. I always prefer with K-pop groups that they have a team that they work with, like ATEEZ has BB Trippin' and so does Psychers. And I think that's why Psychers has that natural cleanliness out the gate in comparison to their predecessors. ATEEZ, it took a hot minute, and the BB Trippin' got like heavy involved, and that's where you got a lot of their implicit movement quality in play. For them, that's what I'm hoping, is that they have a team or somebody that rolls over with them in their comebacks. I don't know this though. If y'all can let me know that, that'd be great. And that'll really help in general for what we're able to see for long-term success with them because they're still very young. I love the energy, and this is naturally going to get refined over the years. Trust me, it will. So it's not even a huge issue. It's very impressive for that to be like the chronic thing, and that's one of the most fixable things that just happens over time. Now that part there, you had one of them kind of move her arm and the other one moved her chest. I liked the intention of that, but it wasn't as easy to read. And the reason why is because of the rotation. Yeah, I think one of them did a little rock and others kind of isolated it. I think for that part, it would have been a lot better if everybody matched kind of the bounciness of how she was coming across to go from side to side. Everyone else kind of ISO'd it. So that would just be my note, is that really trying to have more of the energy push from side to side. I wouldn't feel so stagnant, but of course it is hard whenever you are trying to sing it. I get it. I like that boom, da 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 da, boom, da da da. That second half wasn't quite as clean in the chest, but let's double check that. Do 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 do. Yeah, and that baby. The reason why is because half of them are isolating it to the side and others. Okay. So I want you to notice something. So she's actually facing straight sides. She's facing diagonal, diagonal, diagonal. What happens is energy is being pushed to this. Oh, hold on. Being pushed this direction. She's pushing her energy this direction. And that's why it doesn't feel like the whole group's moving as a whole. It's because like one person's moving slightly differently, or like two people are moving slightly differently than the whole energy pool of what would need to happen. So for me, what I would suggest for that part is, regardless of which direction you're facing, and I also would have recommended somebody else make quite as harsh of a diagonal choice, maybe having her do it, because I mean, she's kind of doing it, but there's a space in between and she's kind of doing it too. And I think that's why it just feels more, it's like heavier. There's more of an imbalance. Like there's more people representing this side than this side. I think's my point. But how they're moving the energy through, yeah, they're all going side to side, except for one of them's pushing the energy back to front. And then they promote it all to the front. Boom, boom, to the front. I enjoyed that motion, but that slide, that syncopation on the second half, that's why it felt a little off, was because not everybody was moving the energy to both sides, if that makes sense. So in general, I like this. This was cool. It was great energy from them. And I'm going to be very honest. You should be pretty impressed with this, because the things that I'm talking about are things that are going to be, those are the easiest fixed things that a group goes through, is getting everybody on the same energy level, because over time, like time's gonna fix that. Even if no one ever tells them to fix it, it will naturally get fixed over the years, because the more they're exposed to whatever choreography they are, their fingerprints are gonna overlap, and how they operate as a group is going to get more and more refined with, okay, this person's role, this is how she does it, so I'm gonna do this to help match her energy better. Like that kind of concession is gonna start playing in the more and more that they like work with each other. So for me, for that to be their chronic thing, it's going to be something that's fixed over, and now I don't know when. Timeline will probably be in about, I mean, if no one talks about it, it'll probably be in about 3 years. 3, maybe 4 years is when that normally comes to light, and it's not really a thing as much anymore. But if somebody talks about it, it'll be expedited. But all that to say, it's still very impressive, because the amount of power, and it's very minimal. Like I had to really look at how they were executing the movement to figure out what was off about it. And it wasn't even off. It was just off enough where everybody's timing was right. And their range was right for the most part, but the energy distribution was off. So having to talk about that was really tricky and different than what I normally have to with groups. So they should be impressed at that, because normally rookies deal with really, like, they did have some big spacing issues for sure. I will give them that. But mostly rookies, I find like bigger chronic problems, like formations are a bigger problem. Levels are a bigger problem. They didn't really use a lot of levels at all in this, so that would be a big recommendation I would give them too. But the energy and presentation and output, I think, is really, really good for a debut for sure, and it makes me excited to see the rest of their work. This is cool. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you want to be a part of a mini marathon, like me taking a look at a group like Kiss of Life, you can head over to Patreon, because I randomly, at a random part of the month, I will release my mini marathon poll for you to vote away, and the poll time only is like 12 hours, so it's not even, you don't even get a full day, so you always got to be on the lookout for that. And I don't promote it on YouTube either. But what's really fun though is that it gives an opportunity for those who maybe their selection wasn't quite chosen for the big marathon. Maybe they'd be able to have a mini group or a group that they follow, a subgroup, be able to be taken a look at as well. So it just allows more opportunity for more people to join in on the fun on a marathon month for sure. And I don't want to have to wait around 5 years to look at Kiss of Life whenever I want to be able to look at, they got 5 practices, let's lock them all out and look at them all, you know? So I feel like part of me allows me to be able to be exposed to what's happening in the more recent debuts by doing a mini marathon in comparison to just having to wait around for them to get a lot of discography under their belt to take a look at them for a month. So all that to say, this has been really fun. I am looking forward to the rest of their work. It's going to be great. If you want to be a part of it or something like this, Patreon's the way to go. If you're okay with just seeing what happens and just coming and hanging out on YouTube, that's okay as well. I'll be hanging out in both spots. Once again, I'm Jess, and I will catch you on the flip side.